While I was in surgery, my daughter tried to sign my house over. She didn't know I woke up early. The world came back to me not in light but in sound. It was a chaotic, rhythmic soundscape. The metronomic beep, beep, beep of a cardiac monitor, the heavy whoosh of an oxygen compressor, and the squeak of rubber shoes on linoleum. I was floating in that strange, terrifying underwater space of the Post-Anesthesia Care Unit, the PACU. My body felt miles away, heavy and unresponsive, as if my limbs had been filled with wet concrete. My eyes were glued shut. The anesthesia was still a heavy blanket over my brain, muting my ability to move. But, cruelly, miraculously, it had left my hearing razor sharp. I tried to twitch a finger. Nothing happened. I tried to groan, to ask for water, but my throat was a desert raw from the intubation tube. Then, I felt it. A hand wrapped around my left hand. It was warm, slightly clammy. I knew that touch. It was the touch of my daughter, Chloe. For a fleeting, beautiful second, a wave of relief washed over me. She's here, I thought, my mind swimming through the fog. She's holding my hand. She's praying for me. But then, the sensation changed. She wasn't squeezing my hand for comfort. She was prying my fingers apart. I felt the cold, hard barrel of a plastic pen being wedged between my thumb and forefinger. It felt alien against my numb skin. "She's too out of it, Chloe," a man's voice whispered. It wasn't a doctor. It was low, nervous, unfamiliar. "This won't hold up, if she doesn't wake up enough to acknowledge it." Then came the voice that shattered my heart. "Just guide her hand," Chloe whispered. Her voice was right at my ear, sharp and impatient, devoid of a single ounce of love. She promised me the house before she went under. "Do it before the nurse comes back. We don't have time." The house. The words hit me like a physical blow to the chest. I wasn't a mother recovering from major spinal surgery to them. I was an obstacle. I was a signature waiting to be harvested. I felt the pressure of her hand covering mine, forcing the pen down onto a crisp, stiff piece of paper that had been slid onto the bedsheet. I tried to pull back. I screamed inside my own head, "No, stop! I am awake!" But my body betrayed me. I lay there, a prisoner in my own skin, feeling the pen scratch against the paper, guided by the daughter I had raised, the daughter I had loved more than life itself. I realized then, with a horror that was colder than the operating room, that the surgery hadn't been the most dangerous part of my day. The betrayal had begun, and I was paralyzed to stop it. To understand how a mother ends up lying paralyzed while her child robs her, you have to understand the slow, quiet erosion of our lives before the hospital. It didn't happen overnight. It happened in the small, everyday moments that I chose to ignore. 3 weeks before the surgery, my life was a study in disciplined exhaustion. I was 58 years old, a retired contract administrator for high-end construction projects. My career had been built on details, reading the fine print, managing timelines, ensuring that foundations were solid before walls went up. I was proud of the life I had built. My pride and joy was my home, a restored Victorian in a district that had gone from oop and coming to booming. It was my nest egg, my retirement plan, and my legacy. It had high ceilings, crown molding I had restored by hand, and a carriage house in the back. That carriage house was where Chloe lived. Chloe was 28. She was beautiful, vibrant, and completely lost. She called herself a lifestyle creator, which meant she spent her days filming videos about aesthetics and her nights complaining about the algorithm. She lived in my carriage house rent-free, a temporary arrangement that had stretched into 3 years. My days started at 5:00 a.m. I would wake up, ignoring the stiffness in my lower back, and go to the kitchen to answer consulting emails. I needed the extra income because rent-free, for Chloe, actually meant cost-heavy. For me, I would hear her waking up around noon on a Tuesday. Just weeks before the collapse, the pain in my back was particularly bad. It felt like a hot wire was being pulled tight through my lumbar spine. I was standing at the kitchen island, applying a heat patch, the smell of menthol and camphor filling the air. Chloe breezed in, wearing a silk robe I knew she couldn't afford. She smelled of expensive vanilla candles, the ones she burned by the dozen but never paid for. "Mom," she said, not looking at me, her eyes glued to her phone screen. "The carriage house fee is lagging again. I can't upload my morning routine content. Can we upgrade to the business fiber? It's only like $80 more a month." I straightened up, wincing as a spasm shot down my leg. "Chloe, good morning," I said, trying to keep my voice steady. "The Wi-Fi is fine. And $80 is a lot when you're on a fixed budget." She sighed, a dramatic, heavy exhale that signaled I was being difficult. "It's an investment, Mom. You have to spend money to make money. If I can't upload, I lose engagement. If I lose engagement, I can't get sponsors." She opened the fridge, took out the organic almond milk I bought for myself, and drank from the carton. I watched her, feeling that familiar, heavy ache in my chest. It wasn't just the back pain. It was the weight of being the only adult in the room. I looked at her smooth hands, her perfect manicure, and I remembered my own hands at 28, rough from working 2 jobs, stained with ink, tired but proud. I had raised a daughter who had never known a callus, and deep down, I knew it was my fault. I had smoothed the road so much that she had forgotten how to walk on her own. "I'll look into the internet," I said, defeated. "Thanks," she said, already walking away. "Oh, and Trent is coming for dinner. Make that lasagna he likes." She didn't ask how my back was. She didn't ask why I was clutching the counter. She just took what she needed and floated back to her sanctuary, leaving me in the reality she refused to acknowledge. Dinner that night was the first time I felt the true temperature of the water I was drowning in. Trent was Chloe's boyfriend. He called himself a crypto-visionary, which seemed to mean he spent a lot of time on Twitter and owned very few actual shirts with collars. He was loud, taking up space in a room not with charisma, but with entitlement. I had made the lasagna, standing for an hour despite the fire in my spine. When they came in, they didn't offer to set the table. They sat down and continued a conversation they had evidently started in the driveway. "The market is shifting, babe," Trent said, spooning a massive portion onto his plate without waiting for me to sit. "Real estate is the only tangible hedge right now. You look at a place like this." He gestured around my dining room with his fork. "This place has good bones, Alara," he said to me, using my first name instead of Mesters. "Vance or Mom. With the right zoning you could flip this for a fortune. Just saying, split the lot, tear down the carriage house, and put up a duplex." Bam. 7 figures. I stiffened. "I'm not interested in flipping my home, Trent. This is where I live, it's where Chloe grew up." Trent chuckled, a condescending sound that grated on my nerves. "Sentiment is expensive, Alara. Asset utilization is wealth." I looked at Chloe, waiting for her to defend our home, to tell him to show some respect. Instead, she was nodding, looking at Trent with wide, admiring eyes. "He's right, Mom," she said, picking at her food. "I mean, it's just a house. Think of what we could do with the money. We could travel. I could really launch my brand in LA. My brand." I put my fork down. The pain in my back was throbbing in time with my heartbeat. "Chloe," I said quietly, "I pay your car insurance. I pay your phone bill. I pay for your health insurance. You live here for free. I think that is enough launching assistance." The room went silent. Trent looked at his boots, heavy, muddy combat boots resting on the hardwood floor I had spent weeks refinishing on my hands and knees. "Wow," Chloe said, her voice dripping with ice. Throwing that in my face. "I'm trying to build something, Mom. Trent is trying to help us maximize our potential." "I don't need help maximizing," I said, feeling a sudden surge of resentment that tasted like bile. "I need help clearing the table." They didn't clear the table. They left the dishes for me. Later that night, as I was loading the dishwasher, tears stinging my eyes from the pain, I heard them in the living room. Trent was pacing, measuring the windows with a tape measure app on his phone. "Yeah, knock this wall out," he was whispering. "Open concept. Adds 50 grand instantly." I stood in the kitchen, feeling small. I felt resentment, yes. But worse, I felt guilty for feeling it. A mother is supposed to give. But I was beginning to realize that I wasn't giving anymore. I was being harvested. A week later, the diagnosis came down like a gavel. Spinal stenosis. Severe nerve compression. My doctor, a stern woman named Dr. Eris, didn't mince words. "If we don't operate, Alara, you're looking at permanent nerve damage. You could lose the ability to walk. The fusion needs to happen, and it needs to happen soon." I was terrified, not of the surgery but of the downtime. I was the engine that kept this family running. If the engine stopped, what would happen to the car? But I had no choice. I scheduled the surgery. In the days leading up to it, I went into overdrive. I wanted to make sure Chloe and Trent were secure while I was recovering. I told myself that if I set them up for success, they would rise to the occasion. It was a dangerous, foolish optimism. I sat at my desk and wrote checks. I prepaid the electricity, the water, and the gas for 6 months. I paid the property taxes early. Then, I did something I would come to regret deeply. I transferred $5,000 from my savings into a joint account I shared with Chloe, an account we used for household emergencies. I wrote a note and placed it next to the checkbook on the kitchen counter. "For groceries and emergencies while I'm down, please be careful with it." I walked into the living room where Chloe was editing a video. "Chloe?" I said, trying to catch her eye. I'm going to be down for a few weeks. The surgery is serious. I need you to be the lady of the house. I've covered the bills. I just need you to handle the day-to-day. Can you do that? She looked up briefly. Yeah, Mom. Of course. We got you. Don't stress. It's bad for your cortisol levels. I wanted to believe her. I imagined scenes of her bringing me soup, helping me to the bathroom, maybe even reading to me. I wanted to believe that the crisis would bridge the gap between us. I organized my files in my office. I put the deed, the insurance policies, and my will in the bottom drawer. I left the key in the top drawer thinking, if something goes wrong, she needs to be able to find these. I didn't know I was essentially loading the gun she would point at me. 3 days before the scheduled surgery, my body decided it couldn't wait. I was in the garden, trying to water the hydrangeas. It was a beautiful afternoon, and the sun dappled through the oak trees. I reached for the hose, twisting my torso slightly. It wasn't a snap. There was silence. Suddenly, my legs simply weren't there. The signals from my brain to my feet just stopped. My lower body turned to water. I crumbled. I fell face first into the dirt, the smell of wet mulch and crushed petals filling my nose. I tried to stand up, but my legs were dead weight. A spike of white, hot agony shot through my lower back, so intense it made my vision black out for a second. Chloe? I screamed. Chloe. The carriage house was only 50 feet away. The windows were open. I waited silence. Chloe! Help me. I dragged myself by my elbows, scratching my arms on the brick edging of the flower bed. I could see her silhouette in the window. She was moving. She was dancing. She was filming a TikTok. A garden aesthetic video. I could hear the faint thrum of a pop song. She couldn't hear me over the music. Or maybe she chose not to. I lay there in the dirt, the grit tasting metallic in my mouth, realizing I was helpless. The control I cherished was gone. The dignity I fought for was gone. A neighbor, Mrs. Gable, saw me from over the fence. She came running, phone in hand. Alara! Oh my God! She called 911. It wasn't until the ambulance arrived, lights flashing and sirens wailing, that Chloe emerged. She came out onto the patio, phone in hand, looking annoyed. Mom, what's going on? She yelled over the siren. The lights are ruining my lighting setup? Then she saw the paramedics lifting me onto the stretcher. She saw my face, gray with pain and shock. Wet, is it happening now? She asked, lowering the phone but not putting it away. My legs, I whispered, tears mixing with the dirt on my face. I can't feel them. Stop filming, Chloe, please. She didn't stop filming. She just switched the camera angle to capture her own concerned face in the foreground. The hospital was a blur of fluorescent lights and urgent voices. Spinal compression, immediate decompression needed, Prep or 3. I was in the pre-op holding area, a curtained-off cubicle that smelled of rubbing alcohol and anxiety. The pain was distant now, pushed back by a heavy dose of morphine, but the fear was sharp. Chloe arrived 20 minutes later, with Trent trailing behind her. They didn't rush to my side. They didn't hold my hand. They stood near the foot of the bed, whispering to each other. I strained to hear them through the drug haze. We need to make sure we have access, Trent was hissing. If she's under for a long time, accounts could get frozen. I know, Chloe whispered back. A nurse came in with a clipboard. We need to verify the emergency contact. Chloe stepped forward, playing the concerned daughter. Her voice was sweet, trembling just enough to be convincing. That's me, she said. I'm her daughter. And doctor, you should know Mom gets confused sometimes. Even before this, I should be the primary contact for everything. Legal, medical. All of it. I tried to lift my head. I am not confused. I slurred. The morphine made my tongue feel thick. The nurse looked at me, then at the teary-eyed daughter. She smiled sympathetically at Chloe. It's okay, sweetie. We'll keep you in the loop. Chloe looked at me then. It wasn't a look of concern. It was a look of calculation. It was the look a vulture gives a dying animal, waiting for the breathing to stop. Don't worry about the house, Mom, Chloe said, patting my leg, the leg I couldn't feel. Trent and I are watching everything. Where exactly is the deed filed? Just for safekeeping. In case the insurance needs it. I closed my eyes. The deed. Why would the insurance need the deed? The predator was in the room, and I was strapped to the table. Minutes before the orderlies came to wheel me into surgery, the mask slipped completely. Chloe came back into the cubicle. She was sweating. Her eyes were darting around the room. She was holding a stack of papers. Mom, she said, her voice frantic. The admissions desk messed up. They missed some liability forms. You have to sign these so they can operate. Hurry. She thrust a pen at me. She placed the papers on the rolling table and pushed it over my chest. I signed everything, I whispered. My vision was swimming. No, they found more. Just sign, Mom. Do you want the surgery or not? I looked down at the paper. The text was swimming, jumping around. But my years as a contract administrator kicked in. My brain recognized the shape of a document even when I couldn't read the words. I saw the header. It didn't say hospital liability waiver. It said quitclaim deed. And below that durable power of attorney, unrestricted, my heart hammered against my ribs.
No, I gasped.
That's the deed. It's just a formality, Chloe snapped, her voice rising. Sign it, Elara. She called me Elara, not Mom. Just then, the curtain swept back. A surgical nurse, a large woman with no-nonsense eyes, stepped in. Time to go, Mrs. Vance, she boomed. Chloe snatched the papers back, hiding them behind her back. I love you, Mom, she called out, her voice suddenly sweet again. As the orderly unlocked the wheels of my gurney, I looked back. I saw Trent waiting by the nurse's station. I saw him mouth something to Chloe. If she doesn't sign it before the anesthesia hits, we have to do it in recovery. The buyer needs the title by Friday. The buyer. They had already sold my house. The squeak of the gurney wheels covered my gasp, but the cold truth settled in my chest, heavier than the anesthesia. I was worth more to them dead, or destitute, than alive. And that brings us back to the PACU. The surgery was over. The fusion was a success physically. But the real operation was happening now, in the recovery room. I was floating in the dark, the voices swirling above me. Just guide her hand. I felt the pen. I felt Chloe's fingers, strong and demanding, crushing my own limp fingers around the barrel. I tried to pull away. I tried to shout. But the paralysis of the recovery phase is absolute. It is a nightmare where you are screaming in a soundproof glass box. Okay. Right there? The strange man, the notary, whispered. X marks the spot. Chloe moved my hand. She was dragging my hand across the paper. I felt the friction of the pen tip. I summoned every ounce of will I possessed. I couldn't pull away, but I could make my hand heavy. I could make it dead weight. I refused to help. I visualized my hand turning into stone. The result was a scribble. A jagged, illegible line that trailed off the page. That's terrible, the notary hissed. It's close enough, Chloe whispered back. It matches her shaky hand from Parkinson's. Parkinson's. I didn't have Parkinson's. They were building a narrative of decline. Nurse is coming, Trent's voice whispered from the doorway. Chloe snatched the paper away. I felt the rush of air as she pulled back. She signed it just as she woke up. Thanks, Chloe chirped, her voice bright and fake. I heard the rapid clack of her heels on the linoleum, retreating. They were running. They were fleeing the crime scene with my life in their hands. I lay there, tears finally leaking from the corners of my taped-shut eyes, sliding into my ears. Trapped, robbed, broken. The clicking heels faded, replaced by the squeak of rubber soles approaching my bed. A hand touched my forehead. This touch was different. It was rough, professional, and kind. It wiped the cold sweat from my brow with a brown paper towel. Ms. Vance, a voice said. It was a woman's voice, deep and raspy. Can you hear me? I couldn't move my mouth. I saw them, the voice said. I saw what they did. I focused all my energy on my right hand. Squeeze my hand if you don't want to sign that, she whispered. It took everything I had. It felt like lifting a car, but I managed to squeeze. A faint, desperate pressure against her palm. Okay, the nurse said. Okay, honey, I got you. She leaned closer. I felt her breath on my cheek. My name is Nurse Ramirez. I've been a recovery nurse for 20 years. I know a shake down when I see one. She typed something onto the computer terminal next to my bed. I'm logging this in your medical record right now, she said. Patient status, non-responsive. Time 14:05. Visitors present daughter an unknown male. Incident forced signature attempt observed. She patted my shoulder. Honey, that signature isn't worth the paper it's written on in this state, but we need to act fast. As soon as you can speak, we're making a call. A flood of relief washed over me. Warm and healing. I wasn't alone. Someone had seen me. 2 hours later, I was in a private room. Do you want pain management? The floor nurse asked. No, I rasped. My voice was like gravel, but my mind was sharpening by the second. I need my phone, and clear head. I refused the opioids. I embraced the pain. The burning in my back was fuel. It kept me angry. It kept me focused. Nurse Ramirez had stayed past her shift to help me get settled. She handed me my phone. I dialed Marcus. Marcus was an old colleague, a real estate attorney who drank too much coffee and hated bullies. Alara, he answered. You're out of surgery. You sound terrible. Marcus, I whispered. Listen to me carefully. Chloe tried to force a quitclaim deed in the PACU. I need you to file a lis pendens on the Victorian. Now, today? Marcus went silent for a second. Then his voice turned to steel. A lis pendens. Elara, that's the nuclear option. It freezes the title. No one can buy, sell, or borrow against it. Do it? I said. And Marcus? Move my liquid assets, the savings, the brokerage. Move it all into the trust we set up last year. The one she's not a beneficiary of yet. Done, Marcus said. I can have the filing recorded electronically within the hour. If they walk into a title company this afternoon, the computer will scream at them. Don't tell her, I said. Let her find out when the card gets declined. I hung up. I lay back against the pillows, the pain in my spine throbbing. I tapped my fingers on the plastic tray table. Tap, tap. It was the rhythm of a judge's gavel. I wasn't a victim anymore. I was the architect of their ruin. I didn't see it happen, but I visualized it with grim satisfaction as I lay in the dark hospital room. I imagined Chloe and Trent walking into a "We'll buy homes for cash" predatory lender's office. I imagined them sliding the forged deed across the desk, smiling that winning smile. I imagined the title officer typing in my address. I imagined the pause, the frown. I'm sorry, Ms. Vance. We can't proceed. There's a cloud on the title. A notice of pending action was filed 45 minutes ago. I looked at my phone on the nightstand. It started to buzz. Chloe calling. I let it ring. Chloe calling. I watched it dance across the table. Then, a voicemail. I listened to it on speaker. Mom! What is going on? We're at the bank. We were just trying to, get some cash for your medical bills. And the card is declined! And the title guy says there's a hold on the house. Call them. They think we're criminals. I stared at the phone. They think you're criminals because you are. I didn't call back. I closed my eyes and breathed through the pain. The next morning, Chloe stormed into my room. Trent was notably absent. She didn't ask how I was. She didn't bring flowers. She brought fury. You set us up, she screamed, throwing her handbag onto the visitor's chair. Nurses poked their heads out of rooms down the hall, but I waved them away. I needed to do this. You froze everything, Chloe yelled. We had a buyer lined up, a cash buyer. Do you know how hard that is to find? To save me, I asked softly. Yes! To save you, she lied, her face red. Trent said the maintenance on that house is going to kill you. We were going to sell it, put the money in a managed fund, and get you a nice condo. We were trying to help. Is that why you forced a pen into my hand while I was unconscious? I asked. The room went deadly silent. The hum of the air conditioner seemed to roar. Chloe froze. Her face was drained of color. I don't know what you're talking about, she stammered. You were awake. You asked me to help you sign. I was awake. Chloe, I said, my voice gaining strength, but I didn't ask. I felt you pry my fingers open. I heard you tell the notary to hurry before the nurse came back. I heard Trent say the buyer needed the title by Friday. She opened her mouth, but no sound came out. The gaslighting had hit a wall of truth. You didn't visit me to see if I survived the surgery, I said, looking her dead in the eye. You visited to see what you could scavenge. She started to cry then. But they weren't tears of remorse. There were tears of a child who had been caught with her hand in the jar. Get out, I said. She grabbed her bag and ran. The next few months were the hardest of my life, physically. I was transferred to a rehab center. I had to learn to walk again. It was agonizing. Every step felt like walking on broken glass. Left foot, pain. Right foot, pain. But every step was a step away from them. I hired a property manager to handle the situation at home. I didn't want to see them. I gave the manager strict instructions. Eviction. I learned later that the carriage house was a disaster. Trent had punched holes in the drywall when he realized the money was gone. Chloe had left piles of clothes and trash. The property manager cleaned it out. He painted the walls a fresh, clean white. He sent me photos. It looked empty. It looked peaceful. I realized then that I had 20 good years left in me. Maybe 30. I wasn't going to spend them being a host to parasites. I wasn't going to spend them being a victim. I walked the length of the rehab hallway without a walker for the first time on a Tuesday. I cried, not from pain but from pride. Keep your eyes forward, Elara. I whispered to myself. Don't look back. When I finally returned home, the house was quiet. But it wasn't lonely. I joined a group called Silver Solos. It was a network of women who managed their own estates. Women who had chosen independence over bad relationships or ungrateful children. We met for coffee on Thursdays. I told my story. I saw heads nodding all around the table. Check the fine print. Ladies, I told them, taking a sip of premium dark roast coffee. Coffee I bought for myself with my own money. Even if your son wrote it. Especially if your son wrote it. I started consulting again. But this time I didn't work for construction firms. I worked with seniors. I helped them audit their family financial entanglements. I helped them spot the red flags, the lost mail, the sudden interest in the will, the joint accounts, for convenience. I wasn't just Alara, the retired administrator. I was Alara, the expert. I found fulfillment in competence that I had never found in enabling my daughter. 6 months later, I was deadheading the roses in the garden, the same spot where I had collapsed. I heard the gate latch click. I looked up. It was Chloe. She looked different. The expensive clothes were gone, replaced by jeans and a t-shirt. She looked thinner. Tired, she was carrying a scuffed handbag that I recognized as one she used to claim was vintage. She stood on the other side of the gate. She didn't come in. "Hi, Mom," she said. "Chloe," I said, keeping my shears in my hand. Trent left. She said, staring at her shoes. "When the money, you know." When it didn't happen. He just took off to Miami. I didn't say anything. I wasn't surprised. Rats leave sinking ships. "I'm staying on a friend's couch," she continued. "But I have to leave by Monday." "Mom, I'm sorry. I really am." I was scared. Trent made me feel like we had no choice. "He said you were going to lose the house anyway to medical bills." I looked at her. I saw the fear. But I also saw the manipulation. She was blaming Trent. She wasn't taking ownership. She was sorry she got caught. She was sorry she was homeless. She wasn't sorry she had tried to rob me while I was bleeding. Can I stay in the guest room? Just for a week, until I get on my feet." My heart broke. It is a terrible thing to look at your child and realize you cannot help them. "I love you, Chloe," I said, my voice trembling slightly. "But I don't trust you, and I can't live with someone I don't trust." She looked up, shocked. She expected the cave-in. She expected the mother to win over the victim. "But where will I go?" she whispered. I walked to the porch steps where I had left a binder. I picked it up and walked back to the gate. I handed it to her over the fence. "What is this?" she asked. "It's not a check," I said. "It's a list of job recruiters in the city. It's an application for a studio apartment that fits a starting salary, and it's a brochure for a financial literacy course." She stared at the binder, tears streaming down her face. "I will pay for the course," I said firmly. "I will pay for a year of therapy. I will pay the deposit on the apartment once you get the job, but I will not give you cash. And you will not live here." She looked at me, waiting for me to crack, waiting for me to open the gate. I didn't. "You need to build your own life, Chloe," I said. "I'm done paying for the renovation of yours." I turned around. I walked back up the path to my beautiful, secure, quiet Victorian home. I heard her crying behind me. It took every ounce of strength in my fused spine not to turn around. But I kept walking. I walked into the house. I closed the heavy oak door. I turned the deadbolt. Thanks. It was the sound of safety. I sit on my porch now in the evenings. My back is strong. The titanium rods holding my spine together are unbreakable. I look at the garden. It's blooming. The surgery fixed my spine, but the betrayal fixed my life. It removed the weight I'd been carrying for decades. The weight of guilt, of obligation, of trying to buy love. My relationship with Chloe is distant. We text. She has a job as a receptionist. She's renting a small room. She's struggling, but she's standing. And so am I sometimes. You have to break your back to realize who is standing there to catch you, and who is just waiting to pick your pockets. I stood up, and I'm never hunching over again.